This conference will now be recorded.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so hope you can see my screen. Okay, so guys, let's get back to our end-to-end DevOps architecture, right? So we started with the planning phase. And for that planning phase of SDLC, we have utilized boards, basically Azure boards. And in that, we try to learn requirements management. Defect management is nothing but adding bugs. I mean, I did not add that, use that template actually, but you can go and use that. Okay. But it is again same the way we assign people, right? That is the same way basically. And release planning is something, it will come when we have to use this terminology when we come to continuous integration and deployment, because that's when you can say you can have all the activities that have to be part of release planning, because it's not just requirements management in release planning. It is also about the CI/CD as well. But with respect to the planning phase, what is release planning? It's all about how many sprints you need to have, in which sprint, how many features have to be developed, what is my capacity, how many resources are on leave. Such kind of things is also called release planning. Okay, but if you're talking about end-to-end release planning, this is all about till deployment basically. Okay, and feature development, how developers will go and pick up the stories and go and work on the development. So these are all the things, I mean, at high level, that you do in Azure boards, uh, as part of the planning phase of SDLC basically. Okay, now the next phase is the coding. For coding, you need to use the version control, right? Or source control management or version control. These are the synonyms. Okay, and for that, you have Azure Repos in our Azure boards basically. So we use Azure Repos, and now we learn about Azure Repos and what you do and what developers do, and the different roles and responsibilities, even in repos as well. So you will be clear what's your role in the coding phase of SDLC, and what's the role of other people as well, and what you do, what they can do, etc. All these things you will learn here. Okay. Having said that, let me get into Azure Repos. Okay. So before getting into Azure Repos, how many how many you guys, worked as a developer when you started your career? Sahul and Lohit or Kiran, did you anytime work as a developer?
Yeah, yes, Purna.
Okay, okay, cool then. So probably, how about you also, Sahul and Lohit?
No.
Okay, so at least you might have exposure, right, in your teams basically, what developers are doing. So, what version control systems you used? You guys used? I know you may not be expert, but you might have got some exposure to them, right? Any version control system that you used? TFS or Accurate
We
or
use both
Cerato?
TFS and GitHub.
Okay, you used both. Okay. How about Lohit? Same.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's good then. Okay. So guys, hello.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Now I can hear.
Okay, fine. I have a problem with my mic. That's why I'm just.
Okay. Okay. Earlier, I mean, I was not hearing you, but just
No,
now
no.
I could hear.
I'm seeing you as on chat. That's why. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that one. Yeah. Yeah. I can hear. Okay. So let's get into Azure Repos then. So since you already have some exposure to source control management or version control systems, okay. Still, I just want to give some introduction so that the other Sahul also will be comfortable in this one, right? Okay. So you have different types of version control systems. Okay, not only with respect to the number of tools, even the type as well. Okay, at least I mean I worked on more than 7 8 version control systems. I mean I can name it, TFS, VSS, and then Acura, Serena Dimensions, and there are GitHub universities there. Everybody knows it most of the times, and there are a couple more as well that I worked on, but it changes big bucket. Okay, it changes from I mean every company has got their own tool for the source control management, but whoever is developing whatever is the tool, right, the underlying mechanisms are two types basically. Okay, uh, so you have a centralized version control system and then distributed version control systems. Just an example is Git is the distributed version control system type, and TFS is the centralized version control system basically. So what exactly it is when you say centralized or distributed? These are the types. Based on these types, you have a number of tools. So when you come to centralized version control system, you have a TFS as an example, VS as an example, and you have a Serena Dimensions as an example, and uh, Acura is an example. Okay. When you come to the distributed version control system, we have examples. GitHub, of course, GitHub internally uses Git actually. Okay, Git is the distributed version control type. So based on the Git, you have the GitHub, you have Bitbucket, you have many other products as well based on that platform. Okay. So then what is a centralized version control system? So if you are using centralized version control systems like TFS, okay, so this is how developers work. So the developers basically start writing code in their IDEs, right? It could be a Visual Studio, it could be Eclipse, okay, it could be anything else as well. There are more than 10 15 IDEs for the developers across different languages. Okay, so the developer start writing the code. Once he completes the code, what he do, he commit the code. Commit is nothing but saving his code onto some other server basically. See, what happens if you are one developer working on a project, you can simply have your code on your laptop or on your desktop. It doesn't matter. But if you're working in a multi-developer environment, working on the same project, then you are working on some features. I am working on some features. Someone is working on some other features. So the code is distributed. Means I have some code, you have some code, and some other one is having some code. But as an application to be working, right, you need to combine all that code. It is nothing but merge actually. So you need to merge all that code and deploy it to the servers, right? Then only have all the features in one application. So for that reason, we have to keep that code in some location. It is your server, right? So saving the code to the server is nothing but a commit code actually. Okay, so this is how it works. The developer from who is using IDE to write the code directly save the code to the server. That's how it works in the centralized version control system. So on the server you might have a TFS installed. Okay, on your developer laptop or a DevOps laptop, I mean DevOps engineer or anyone's laptop, whoever is trying to connect to the code, right, they will have a I mean IDs like Visual Studio, Eclipse, etc. But whereas in distributed version control system, it is a little different. So there are two ways that a developer can save the code into the server. One is okay. One is directly committing code to the server directly. So as you see in the centralized version control system, here also he can do like that. The other one is uh, he doesn't want, in some scenarios he doesn't want to save the code or push the code to the server directly. He wants to keep it on his local disk for some time because of various reasons. We will keep talking about these different reasons as part of this course. Okay, so what this developer do, he will keep his code for some time on his local disk. Whenever he wants to push it, then he will push that code to the server. Okay, so I'm using different words, commit code, push code, save code, etc. Guys, these are all different the objective of these words are the same, and as you know the meaning, right? But in different scenarios we will use different terminology basically. Okay, but at high level you can understand like this: centralized version control system directly save it on the server. Distributed version control system, you have both the ways. You can directly save it on the server, or first you can save it on your local disk and save it on the server. You may think that, hey, whether I directly save it on the server or not, I generally save it on my laptop, right, or desktop. Saving on my laptop or desktop is must and should, you may say that. So there is a little difference when I say saving on local disk and push it to the server, or saving, or pushing the code directly to the server. There is a little difference I talk about. Okay.
Puna, one question.
Yeah.
So when we are, why do we really use a measure of consistency over local disk?
Yeah. S- So whether it is a distributed or centralized version control system that you are using, you definitely save the code in your local laptop. So even if you even if you take a notepad as well, right? If you don't
Yes.
save, when you are closing that one, it will ask you, right? Do you want to save? Isn't it?
Yeah,
So
that was
similarly, yeah,
that was clicked.
similarly, yeah, here also you will save it. First of all, you have to save it in the local disk. There is no doubt about it. But what is the difference when you're using distributed and centralized? That's what I'm coming here in the next slide. Okay,
Okay.
you will understand in the next slide. So you will use a different IDs, Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, etc., based on the programming language that the developer uses. Okay, but you don't worry. You don't need to be an expert, because DevOps engineer is not a developer. He doesn't need to know the programming language. Okay, he just needs to know the some terminology of different programming language. That's it. Okay, because today you will be asked to work on build and deployments of .NET, but tomorrow you might be asked to work on build and deployments of Java, or some other day company asks you to work on Python, right? There is no limit for this, because you are not a developer. You don't need to know coding, but you need to know some background about these programming languages, like, hey, what is the programming language type, how they will build, okay, what artifacts are, what artifacts will be generated when you compile that programming language code, etc. Such kind of things you need to know, not more than that. Okay, because many people ask me, okay, you are saying that you have to work on Java, you have to work on .NET, etc. Yes, you have to work on, there is no limit, right? No one can stop, uh, no one can stop organization to ask you to do that, but you need to know how to do it actually. So that's what you're going to learn here as well. But as I said, you are not an expert, you don't write code. Okay, so now centralized version control system and uh, distributed version control system. Azure DevOps supports both type of the version control systems. Guys, I keep interchanging the words. Version control system or source control management or SCM, all are same. Okay. So it supports both Git and TFVC. TFVC nothing but Team Foundation version control system, which is based on the centralized version control system type. Git is a decentralized version control system. So where do you find it? When you create a project, right? If you remember, when we were creating the project, we were selecting the worker process, which is your Scrum or Agile, etc. When you are creating a project, and we are also selecting public project or private project. Along with that, if you remember, we have one more drop down, that is code actually. So you will, if you expand that code drop down, you will see Git and TFVC. Okay, if you want to go with centralized, then go with the TFVC. If you want to go with any distributed version control system, then select the Git. We selected the Git actually when we were creating the project. So then what is TFVC? So what are the different attributes that you need to remember? means just an example TFAC, but what you need to understand with respect to centralized version control system.
Purna, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, how do you know which one to select, whether Git or an TFVC?
So it's not your decision, it's the team
Okay.
decision. Okay.
Okay.
But if I have to tell you, right, if you are in the 2015 or 16, you used to have this choice, centralized or decentralized, or Git or something else. But if you see in the last 3 4 years, right, I don't see any new teams using centralized. Now
Okay.
more than 90% people move to Git. But after, if you see after 2 3 years, right, even legacy people who means who are using centralized also will move to Git. Actually, I think in 2 3 years the entire world will be on the Git.
Okay.
Still I see some part of the people, right, using older types, like centralized, because of various reasons. I tell you couple, right. There might be one or two people working on that project, and they hardly get some development activity. There is no surprise that there are some projects which gets development activity hardly once in a year, or sometimes they don't even get development work even for a couple of years as well, because there's a legacy application, they don't need any changes to that. In those cases, why do they move from centralized to decentralized, distributed? They don't need to spend time, right? That's it. Those are the scenarios you see. But
Okay.
whoever is starting today in the last 3 4 years, definitely it is Git, because there is no debate on this one, basically. Centralized or decentralized, distributed. Okay.
Okay.
So TFVC is a centralized version control system. Okay. So you can remember these attributes why I'm highlighting it. It helps in your interviews as well. Okay. So when you're using TFVC, team members have only one version of each file in their development machines. Okay, means your laptops or desktops. That means, if I have to give an example, you are having your folders, right? Yeah, your documents, your PPTs, your notepads, whatever it is, you are keeping it in a C drive or D drive. Do you see any versioning? No, right? When you right click it, you cannot see version 1, version 2, version 3, right? You only see version 1 only. Whatever is the latest, that is the latest. You cannot have a version 1, version 2. That is the reason we keep a copy, right? If you think that it may get corrupted, you make a copy of that one as a backup. Similarly, when you're using TFAC for maintaining your code, right? The code is on your laptop. All that code files, it can be C sharp, it can be VB, Visual Basic, it can be Java, anything, right? Everything will be with a single version only. There is no difference between your regular files like documents, PPTs, notepads, and the C sharp files or whatever it is. Everything is will have one version. And history is maintained on the server. History means what changes been made to your code file. I'll from now onwards I'll take example of C sharp code. Means .cs is the extension for the C sharp code. Okay. So history, all the history means your .cs files, who made what change at what point of time, all that history is maintained on the server if you're using the centralized version control system like TFVC. And there are some branches concepts. So branches is nothing but you can think of it as a backup, that what you maintain in your folders. Let us say you have a folder, you keep making some changes to the content in that folder. What people do, they make a copy of that one, right? Okay, hey, the content in this folder is for the dev environment details, the content in this folder is for the test environment details. Or you can think of it as a files as well. You may maintain different versions of content in different folders. Okay, because you do not have any mechanism to version it or make a replica of it. You basically make a copy it and maintain it. Similarly, even for the code as well, you will make a copy of your code basically. Okay. Because because of various reasons. One reason is that uh, you have your code. For your code to work, you need a database, right? Just an example, database server, and database servers will be different from environment to environment. That means for development environment, you may use a SQL Server database with the name as dev db. When you go to test, you may have another server with the SQL installed with name as a testdb. Like that, you will have a different servers. You need to maintain that. So when you deploy your code to different servers, you need to keep changing those configuration entries as well. Okay, and you don't want to maintain a copy of your configuration by saying that test dev etc. That's bad process. So that's the reason, rather than maintaining backups or different folders with different names, there is a concept called branches in the source control management. We create a branch. So each branch will have the same code. Okay, and there will be different purposes of different branches. We'll talk about in the upcoming sessions, but just a thing that you have branches to learn as well. And these branches are path based and created on the server. I'll talk about what is path based. It's not a important item. You can just simply remember that you need to learn branches. And git is a distributed version control system. Git repositories can store locally, that is on your developer machine, or even on the remote as well. Okay, so now I slowly introduced a term called repository. Okay, just before that I was using the term called folders etc, right? Folders, files etc. So from now onwards you start using terminology called repositories. Repository is nothing but a folder. That folder might contain subfolders or might contain files. That subfolder might contain files or some other subfolders, but end of the day you call it as a repository. Okay, the code that you put it in any folder will be called as a repository. If it is on your machine, you call it as a local repository. Okay, so git repositories can store locally, even on tfec as well. It will store on your local. It will be on server as well. So copy of source repository, right, on each developer's machine. What I mean to say, I mean everybody's code will be available on everybody's machine. That's what it means basically. So when we're going to work on the lab, right, that time you will understand what I mean to say. Developers can commit each set of changes onto their dev machine. Means you have the versioning on your laptop as well when you are using git, which is a distributed version control system. Means on my laptop also I can see multiple versions. That means if you take, let us say, uh, one .cs, or else we can take one document which is being placed in the centralized, sorry, in git. I am saying you will have a different versions of the same file on your laptop as well when you are using git, but you don't see it physically. I mean, we can't see it with our eyes. Those are some hidden. You will see only one, but you can revert back to old actually. Okay, because that it is similar to what we see hidden files or hidden folder concept, right? In our regular file system, it is similar to that. Okay, and if you see, you can do all these version control activities like looking at the history of changes etc, comparing files, means between version 1 version 2. Everything can be done on your local as well. This is much helpful when you don't have a network connection. Let us say you are working on your coding, but suddenly you lost internet because of some reason, but you want to save it on your local disk and start working on some other changes. But at some point of time, if you want to go back to the previous version, you can go back. Simply you say revert to the older version, even though you don't have a network connection. But this is not possible in terms of centralized, because in centralized you don't have versioning of files on the local laptop. Got it? That's a main difference basically. But in our modern days, there is no concept of losing power for days and days, or hours and hours, right? So this scenario will not come, but That's how Git became very famous, but back in 10 to 12 years ago. Okay, so these are the differences that you need to remember, but I don't think people are asking these kind of questions, but for your reference you need to know it. This is what important, so you need to know some terminology before we get into actual labs, right? What are those? So if you are using TFS, right? Or any centralized version control system, you use this terminology check-in. Check-in is nothing but the developer makes some changes, or for that sake, right? Anyone can make changes in the code, right? It can be a developer. If it is a tester, it is a automation test scripts. If it is a DevOps engineer, probably generally you don't use IDEs. You directly do the changes on the tool itself if you are required to make any configuration changes to the code. Okay, but even if you have it on your Visual Studio, you use this terminal. Check-in is nothing but you make some changes on your in your EDE and save that changes to the server. That is called check-in. Checkout is nothing but if you want to make changes to your code, right? First you need to check out it. Why do you need to check out? By default, your files are in a locked mode. Means you will see the lock symbol as well. If you have to make changes, first you need to unlock it. The process of unlocking is nothing but checkout. I mean, you don't need to do exhaustive stuff. You just need to double click your file and start writing it. It automatically unlocked if you are having the permission. That is called as checkout. And then commit is nothing but committing your code to server. There is a small difference between check-in and commit. Most of the times it is check-in only. Okay, people use check-in only. And then you have a branches. Guys, I have a different color coding. You have a green color, right? That means this terminology, check-in checkout terminology, will be used in the centralized version control system like TFS. And these purple colors, but branches, you will have a different types of branches. I will say master, development branch, feature branch, QA branch, etc. Okay, and you will have version control policies, means who can do what. It's all about permissions basically, so that you call it as a version control policies. And then merging means combining the code of one person code with other person code in a centralized location is called merging. So these three are, you see purple color, it is nothing but this terminology is common whether you are using centralized version control system or a distributed version control system like Git. And now I have this blue color like a cloning, local repository, remote repository, staging changes, prune, lock is again common, push, fetch, pull, sync, change sets, tags. So you have the get latest means uh, uh, we go in detail. Get latest is nothing but every day people commit the code to the servers, right? When I come tomorrow as a developer, I don't have the code of other people, so I need to take the other people's code as well to my laptop. In that process, I use this get latest operation, or you can say command. Pull request, this is for the code review mechanism that we use in Git basically. And then stash, this is a very good operation or command that we have in Git. We talk about it. And then cherry pick. So that's the legend basically. So we're going to learn all these things. We double click each and every one of these items in our sessions. Okay. Uh, you will do all these so most of the time as a DevOps engineer, right? You will spend in creating the branches and doing merging of code between different branches. Okay, and applying the version control policies and doing locking some repositories and tagging changes, etc. You will spend time mostly on these areas. And with respect to the other operations, like these are all related to your development, like push, fetch, pull, etc. You don't do all these things. If at all somebody asks you to make some change to some configuration file in the project, you can directly do it from the Azure Repos UI as well. But you never know, and it is a best practice to know how developers work as well. So my suggestion is that now I am going to do all these things as a developer and as a DevOps engineer as well. So guys, the prerequisite is for this is to have some IDE. I am also from Microsoft background, so I use a Visual Studio. Okay, I would request you guys to go on Visual Studio, install on your laptop if you don't have it. Okay, you can see. I'm sure two of you might already have that, right? Sahul, if you don't have it, go ahead and install professional. So there are different versions. Okay, uh,
Okay.
you will have the free version. Even I use the free version. Okay, community version is the free basically. It will show you, right? Go ahead and install it. Actually, it takes some time. Go ahead and use the 2019 Visual Studio. Okay,
Okay.
you don't need all
Okay.
these things. Okay. So now you have some introduction. Of course, branches is a big concept that we will go in. But before we go to the branches, you need to learn all these different operations with the separation of a DevOps role, DevOps engineer role, and the developer role. Okay. So let's get started basically. Okay. First, so I have my Visual Studio installed on my laptop. So since I mean, you may not be prepared for this, I'll just give an introduction and we can start doing or implementing these operations with scenarios from tomorrow. So I have my Visual Studio installed. Okay. Guys, my menu items might be little different uh, with the latest Visual Studio what you have, because Visual Studio delivered a couple of releases in the last 7 8 months as well. It's the same version 2019. They released some more versions, so that means you may see some difference in some of the main menu items in terms of placement or some other features, but that's not a drastic difference. Okay. So whatever is the version, our operations will not change, because this is not related to your IDE. It is related to your source control system or version control system. And it doesn't matter how many versions will come, even in your source control system tools landscape. These will be forever. Probably you will have additional operations coming in future, but these will be there because these are foundational stuff and advanced stuff. Okay. So I've been using this Visual Studio. So you see some history as well. Okay, but if you want to see the Visual Studio, say continue with code, without code. So I don't need to explain all these things because you already know. Just for Sahul. So Sahul, when you install your Visual Studio, right? This is what you see. We will go to Solution Explorer and start using creating projects. And Team Explorer is an utility which will help us to connect our IDE with the version control system. In our case, it is Azure Repos, internally using Git actually. Okay. For the time being, I'm not doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and probably when you install your Visual Studio, right, it may not have a Git actually. Then you may not be able to see Team Explorer by default. You will see it under View basically. Okay, somewhere you see here. But I guess in your latest versions of Visual, not latest sub versions of your Visual Studio, you may see Team Explorer here itself as a main menu. That's the only difference. Okay. Once you install, another thing what I observe is that uh, you do not see Git related features. So what you have to do, you go to the tools, options. When you get an issue, then you do like this. So go to tools and options, and here you have a option called source control. Okay. In the source control, you have plugin. So you have to have by default it might be in none actually. You just need to change it to Git.
Okay.
That's it. Once you've done this, you are ready for working with Azure Repos or any other version control system. Okay, and on top you can see sign in. I generally sign in to Visual Studio with my version control system account ID. Basically I see it is more, it is 100% your company email ID only, because the same email ID will be used for any tool in your company, right? So be it a cloud, be it your email, be it anything is your company email ID. So I generally log in with this. Okay, that means I have access to my Azure Repos as well. So let's not do this one. This is one you have to install. Let's get into Azure Repos. dev.azure.com. So mine is your planner. It's my project. So today just like a tour basically. Okay, tour of this thing, guys. If you see, we are in the summary, right? You see, this widget is slowly updating, the stats here. These are all widgets: widget 1, widget 2, widget 3, etc. It is showing now how many members are in this project, how many work items created, etc. So you can go ahead and add as many widgets as required for you. Basically, if you are an administrator, you will be able to add widgets. If I go to dashboards, right? Sorry, this is a overview dashboard. This is, sorry, uh, where I am missing this widget. Okay, we'll come here. First let me start this one. So far we looked into the sports, all these different areas. Now get into repos. Click on this. When you get into repos, right, when you start freshly, you will not have anything here. This is how you see your your project name, and it will give you an options how you will connect your IDE on your laptop with this Azure Repos basically. Okay, you can clone this. So on the top, it is very important. Basically, we are in your organization, your planner project, and we are in Azure Repos, and we are in the files section. Here you can see files. Okay, files is what your content, right? Rest everything is about operations, commits, pushes, branches. These are all the operations on your files. That's why by default you will go to files, and in that, you can see this inverted Y symbol, right? This is the symbol for the repository. Okay, the same repository will be on your local laptop as well. So this is online reservation system repository. By default, when you create the project, right, a repository will be created with the project name. That's why you see online repository system repository. Okay, and of course we will go ahead and add as many repositories we want. This is to keep your code. I can say this is a folder for you in your regular terminology. Okay, but how I connect this with my local laptop or ID on my laptop? So these are the different ways. Okay, so you can use a HTTPS or SSH. This is for the people who do not use IDEs. I mean, there are hardly, see, I mean, if you don't use IDE, your productivity gets reduced. Many people debate with me, hey, in the videos people show doing all these operations from the command prompt, but you will ask us to do it from the IDE. My only point is that, see, all these command line arguments are there since beginning, since 20 years. Those days we do not have the tools with all these beautiful US. That's why we used to do that. Now we are paying for the tools. Why we are paying for the tools? To reduce the effort that is required to do your operations, right? Okay, but people are still using older way. That means you are not effective. See, I mean, company for company, it doesn't matter whether you are intelligent or non-intelligent. Okay, for companies, what matters is only the productivity, how fast you are doing and how effectively you are doing. They don't care, or in our project manager don't care, nobody don't care uh, how complex work you are doing. We only care how fast and how effectively you are doing. People need to understand that. And in real time, only people who upload the videos in YouTube, you see with commands. But in real time, that's not the case. If somebody is using, advise them why you are still using command prompt, right? I mean, is that something you can't do from IDE? That's okay. But there is nothing that you can do in command prompt and you can't do in IDE. Everything can be done from both the places. But your productivity is more when you are using IDE because you have a navigation, you have the guidelines, and you will not go wrong. Okay. So how do you connect your remote repository with your IDE? So you have different ways here. So I was talking, right, there are more than 10, 15 IDEs, mostly what people uses. So for Android development, like, mobile development, you have Android Studio. I know this. I don't know Cilian. I don't know Data Grid. Eclipse is for your Java development. IntelliJ IDE is also for your Java development. Okay, because Eclipse is some kind of open source. IntelliJ is, is a paid basically. PHP Storm is for PHP, Python for Python developers, RubyMan for Ruby developers, Tower I don't know, Visual Studio for all the developers, VS Code, this is for both, .NET people and as well as all the scripting people, be it Angular, React, etc. But those things can also be done here. But VS Code became very famous because earlier your Visual Studio was not supporting IntelliSense for your, Python and some other Perl, etc. But this guy will support everything. So if you look into in the external world, right? Whoever was using, PHP, Python, etc., they're also moved to VS Code because Microsoft is known for a super duper documentation, and this is, latest and up to date. uh, I mean, connecting with the Git and everything. I don't know WebStorm, guys. Okay. So Visual Studio, I mean, your Azure Repos is supporting all these different IDEs, so you don't need to worry with respect to the programming language support. Okay. So for me, I use Visual Studio because I'm a uh, I'm from .NET background, and I'm going to use .NET programming language as a demonstration basically. So the moment you select it, it will open this one. Okay, it is saying, hey, open your Visual Studio. That's it. Okay, let's open it. There are multiple ways to connect your Visual Studio with your Azure Repos. This is one of the ways. Okay, there is another way as well. But you may wonder, hey, why I need to connect my IDE with, right? But because you do development or you write code on your laptop, not on the server, right? As a developer, that's the reason you need to connect, so that I can push, or I can commit the code from my laptop to the remote repository. So let me go ahead and do some. This is my DevOps account, right? That's it, I think. If you go to Solution Explorer, I mean, if it is not available, guys, I mean, for Sahul, you can go to View and find that. Okay. Now this prompt, you see, hey, you are trying to clone a repository from the project called Online Reservation System, and the repository name is Online Reservation System, and this is the URL of that remote, that remote repository. So remote is nothing but, if it is on the server, you use the term called remote. If it is on your laptop, you call it as a local repository. And what is the path in my local repository? This by default it will go to C colon users and your account, and then source repository will go by default there. If you want to change it, you can change it. You can put it wherever you want. Most of the times, uh, see, my habit is to keep everything in a D drive. I don't keep it even in C drive basically in the default. That's my habit, but it's up to the individual developers. Okay. So you just need to clone it. See, this is empty as of now. There is nothing here. I mean, you see, there is no code here. Once you clone it and make an connection between this repository and your Visual Studio, then you can keep sending, or keep pushing your code to here basically. Okay. So it's happening. It is basically downloading some metadata and everything. Because to make integration between this Visual Studio and your IDE, it needs some files for the integration, right? Those files have got downloaded basically. Now it is cloning the entire stuff. So where it is done, you can go and see it actually. So this is the place where it downloaded, right? Online reservation system. You see two files here, .git and then .vs. Okay, .git contains some information. I mean, because your IDE, you're going to add a number of projects in your Visual Studio, right? Uh, all those projects have to be integrated with remote repo, or you have to save it on the remote repository. For that, you need to have some system available. So that's why by default, when you clone it, your system automatically creates these files. Okay, git and then .vs, because this is Visual Studio file. Okay, and this is not related to your project. It's only about integration. That's how you have the integration available. Okay, and now you don't see anything here, right? It is just a file. So now your Visual Studio is integrated with your uh, remote repo. You can, I mean, your developer can start go on using it actually. And if you see on the top as well, you see my ID is already logged in here. You can see here. Means next time it will not ask me. That's it. If you want to remove, you can remove it and move on. Now people will go and start adding projects to this. And once you do it, earlier this team explorer was empty, right? There was nothing is being shown. Now you can see many things. You will work with changes, branches, pull requests, sync. This is all you see there, and more than this one, right, in our PPT. And as a DevOps engineer, you need to give very good attention to settings basically. Okay, you click on settings. Okay, you have this security. It will take you to our DevOps. Okay, you can see here. Okay, so what happens many of the times, you might have given access uh, uh, to your developer to Azure, I mean this Azure DevOps, but probably he was a part of by somehow he might have been dropped, or he might have been only in valid users. It can be anything there might be, but he needs to contribute. Then you need to make him as a contributor. You just need to check that. Sometimes your architect might be requiring some special permissions, right? Or your project manager. By default, you add everyone to contributor. Then you need to make them to project administrators, or build administrators. So such kind of things that he will do. You see, right, when I clicked on security, it taken me to there only. And group membership, similarly, again the same thing. Okay, and then work item areas, your boards basically, we worked on it, right? Who should be part of what, etc. And then iterations is nothing but your sprints, right? It's a single place where you can do everything. It's about notifications. So that's why it is called as a team project configurations. Okay, if he is a regular, I mean if a DevOps engineer is just a contributor, he may not be able to see all this. Everything will be grayed out for him. You can try that basically. Everything will be grayed out. He cannot do anything here. Okay, and then team project collection, again you will have the security. Okay, we'll look into this once we, this is for templates. And finally you come here basically git. So there are a couple of settings in git as well, global settings. So many of the times what happens, I mean by somehow, by I mean unconsciously, these settings will change. Your developer says, hey, I'm not able to see these git settings. I'm not able to connect to my Azure Repos, or for that sake any other source control system, right? The first place that you have to come here, you come to team explorer if it is Visual Studio, and look at these settings basically. Is verify his username, the account ID, and repository location. And these you can we talk about this prune, rebase, etc. Okay, uh, and then that's it. You have to see it, and then this is also important in the different and difference and merge tools. It has to be your IDE name basically. If you are a developer using Eclipse, then it has to be Eclipse. So if you don't have this one, that means this is not set correctly. Okay, you have to look into this one. Now go back, and then repository. These are global settings. It doesn't matter how many repositories that are there in your Visual Studio. Global settings are applicable for all those repositories, but it is for particular to one repository. So again, you check username, account IDs, and you see you will talk I will talk about this .git ignore file when I create a project. Okay, right now there is nothing here in this remote repository because I cloned it a very empty one. Okay, and so this is how your IDE knows when I take a latest version from the remote repository, what is the location that I connected to, you see, and when I push it, where I am pushing to. Okay, you can see here. So if I want to detach my IDE with the remote repository, I can simply remove this basically, then it will be detached. But we will look into it when we start working on the projects. Okay, and there are some others. Okay, there are many things, you don't worry about this. So but mostly you need to worry about this detaching and attaching. That is a process, remove and add. And then the email IDs, when some developer gets into issue, they will come and ask you. So look into these things in your real time. So that's why settings is very important. So right now I did not. So now develop I mean this is connected with remote repository. Developers can go ahead and write create their own projects. In the bottom you see repository name, you see inverted y symbol. The same repository whatever you have there on the remote means on the server, is it here as well. And you see one more thing called in a master. This is called a master branch in Git, right? There are Git also, as I told you, right, you have the branches. Whenever a repository is created, by default a master branch will be created, means a branch with the name called master. This is by design. Okay, and you see in the bottom 0 0. So there are 0 unpushed commits. There are no pending changes, etc. We talk about these things, but I'm just giving you a tour. Okay, now how people can go ahead and add a project. He can go on new project, etc., or you can do from here as well. Okay, wherever you find that thing basically. So ASP.NET web application, there are number of templates, but I go with this and say next. So I'm telling you from scratch basically. Okay, so it will be placed in this path by default. You can give name. I am not giving any name now. Okay, or else let's leave it for the timing. And you will have a solution and projects and the framework that it will be using. Say create. I'm also saying make use MVC, MVC, and add some web API projects. These are don't worry about all these things. You are a not developer. It's like an MVC is nothing but a web application. Web API is nothing but APIs basically. Okay, I'm also asking add one unit test project as well. Okay, say create. Okay, whatever I'm doing now, this is not how generally happens in regular day-to-day life basically. Okay, since this option is available, I connected like this clone from I use that clone option. It opened Visual Studio, and then I connected my Visual Studio. But generally what happens, if you are in your regular real-time projects, right? Somebody like your architect or team lead or tech lead, they basically go ahead and create all this structure like web application and then APIs and then unit test project. They create the skeleton and they keep it ready. That skeleton they keep it ready, and then they will ask DevOps engineer, hey, I have my skeleton, I need to keep it in my remote repository. Okay, give me access to Azure Repos and a repository. You name the remote repository like this. They will give all that names, etc. All you need to do is that, give that give access to that guy to this Azure Repos. By default, when you give access to Azure DevOps, he has a Azure Repos access as well, but ensure that he is in the contributor group. That's it. Now what that guy will do, he will not go and clone it basically, because you already have the project here. Okay, what that guy do, instead of going this process, he will open his Visual Studio and connect his Visual Studio to the, to the remote repository in a reverse way. But whatever is the, I'll show that in tomorrow. Okay, that way as well. So once I added a project, you see, right, there are plus symbols between beside each and every file basically, not the folder. If you see plus symbol, you see plus, and if you expand each and every folder, you see plus symbol. C# is nothing but, you are using C# programming language. Everything is a .cs extension. Okay, and you see some web.config files. This is where the developers will keep their configuration entries, like what database servers, user id, passwords, etc. And everywhere you see plus symbol. That means if you are seeing a plus symbol, that means, hey, your project is under version control system, but you haven't committed this code into version control system physically. Means whatever you see here, is it on your laptop, it is saying you, hey, go ahead and add these files to your version control system. That's what it is saying. Okay, once I add it to version control system, that's where, I'll, instead of plus symbol, I will see a lock symbol. Okay, so when I'm committing this one or adding this code to my version control system, by default it will go to master. You can see on the bottom, master branch basically. So there are number of ways to add this code to our version control system. Okay, either you right click on the project or right click on a single file, but right click on the solution is nothing but a group of projects. Okay, because when you are developing any application, right, you will have a number of projects, middleware project, UI project, API projects, or there will be a number based on the architecture. Don't worry about that. Right click and then say, you can simply say, no, you will have a commit option here. Where is that? I already added to solution content. That's why it is showing me plus symbols. Where is this commit gone? Do you see that? Why it is asking me again to do this? No. Okay, anyways, it is added. We have, let's go to Team Explorer. Okay, you can click on the changes. When it changes, right, you will see what are all the files to be added. So these are all the files under web application. So in Solution Explorer, you will see a different view, and in Team Explorer, you are seeing a different. It is all folder view basically. Okay, app start, content, controllers, fonts, properties, scripts, views. This is all you see here as well, right? Controllers, fonts, views, etc. Okay, all you need to do is give some name. Okay, my first, I'm just giving it. And in the bottom you can see some git attributes and git ignore as well. I did not add it. Even your Visual Studio project did not add it. This is added by your git framework integrated with your Visual Studio. Okay, I will talk about this git ignore tomorrow. So so when I was showing, this one, when you're using Git, you can save or commit changes to the disk and then change, push those changes to server as well, or you can directly save it to server. Okay, right now what I'm going to do, if you have this option, right, open this drop down, commit all and push, commit all and sync. For the timing, I'm say commit all. That's it. Now when you say commit all, you can see some commit id created. For every operation, an id will be created for, for identification. It is saying, hey, it is created locally, and it is saying this is not available on the remote repository. If you want to make it available on the remote repository, click on the sync or use the sync operation. That's what it is saying. Sync to share your changes with the server. I'm not going to do any one of these things for today. Now, see, though I clicked on the commit, it is created locally only. To just verify that, you come to this repository, online reservation system. You can simply say refresh. See, there is nothing here. Still, though I committed, that means in Git, when I say commit, it is committed to my local laptop with versioning features enabled, not to the remote actually. Guys, so that's it for today. Tomorrow I will show the other way of connecting Visual Studio with version control system. It can be Azure Repos, it can Bitbucket, it can be anything basically. The operations will be similar. Okay, I will show from tomorrow that one, and then we'll start working on. We'll go by scenarios. The way we went ahead in Azure Burst, right? We'll take a scenario and we'll use the operation. That way you will have a clear idea. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
that's it, guys. For yeah, any questions?
As of now, from my end.
Okay, yeah. So since Lohit and Kiran, you already been working on this, you might have some scenarios as well, or your developers might have some issues. You can ask me those things as well. We will cover as part of these sessions. Okay.
Okay,
Or you can ask your developers, hey, what issues you generally face? Note it down and ask me so that I can clear for you. Okay.
sure.
Because every developer is different, every issue is different. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. We'll catch up.